I'm Chris.
I'm Sandy.
And this is Parenting Autism. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 131 of the Parenting Autism Podcast.
Take four.
Hi, Sandy.
Hey, babe. Let's just cut the intro since we've had to restart 3 times.
Yeah.
The wrong month, other things. So anyway, here we are. And
Take 4. Roger.
Take 4. We just know we're being battled because we're doing the Lord's work. And sometimes the devil don't want the message to get out there. But we're here. We're going to deliver.
And we're going to start out with an email that we received.
Go with it, babe.
It says, wow, first I have to share my true appreciation for your family. I am discovering you months and months past when you first started this podcast. So lucky for me, I have over 100 episodes to listen to. But I have to share, I couldn't go any longer without sharing with you, the number one thing that connected me to continue to listen after just randomly putting a search on Apple Podcasts, the wording Parenting Autism. But I have to say, what actually kept me listening is your sharing of your faith. My son has autism, specifically, and episode number 128, my son knows who God is, and I, as a mother and a believer, have struggled with my son's knowing of God, and I worried for him. Your feeling of a calling to speak and to help churches connect the dots, and not only just the churches. A lot of the things you're talking about, creating tools that I need to be able to help share who Jesus is with my son, and thank you. I love how you just said, instead of asking God why, we ask God, what do you want me to do with this? What is it that I need to do? Because ultimately our life that we have and the things that we have been given are part of God's plan, and it is, in fact, Plan A. Because we did talk about God's Plan A. Mm-hmm. And it is God's Plan A for our lives. And we need to go with his plan. And that was from Laria. Thank you, Laria.
Thank you,
we
Laria.
appreciate that.
And hearing you read that out loud, for the listeners and for me to hear it again, it really rolls with the Bible verses that I wrote down this morning that I felt led to share on the podcast.
Wow.
How about that? So in 2 Corinthians 1, 3-4, it says, let us give thanks to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the merciful Father, the God from whom all help comes. He helps us in our troubles so that we are able to help others who have all kinds of troubles using the same help that we ourselves have received from God. And It was like affirmation to me that this is why we are being called to do this podcast, to carve out time once or twice a month to do it. It's why we're called to create these tools that we find are helping Bryce in hopes that it will also help other families and other mothers and other fathers who are worried about the spirituality of their child and their soul, not just where they're going to go to college, but where they're going to go after they die. That's more important to me. And I have found other listeners throughout this podcast connecting, saying that's what's important to me as well. Yes, we want him to get educated. Yes, we are working diligently to help him with his reading specifically, which we'll talk about, and other things. But at the end of the day, his knowledge of the Bible, his knowledge of his Creator, his knowledge of his relationship with Jesus, that's what matters most to us. And that's why we want to share these tools. So I know we are going to be actively working on updating our website with some tools.
Getting tools together.
We're going to be announcing some other opportunities. And it's definitely calling that we're feeling. And we're excited as the Lord keeps whispering November in my ear. So I think that's when we're going to really start to put this together and hopefully launch beginning of 2025. That's the goal.
Okay.
So anyway, thanks again, Laria. And thank you, Lord, for your word and how you use it to speak to us.
He always matches up his word with,
doesn't he? I love that.
Current topics.
Yeah, when it can speak like that.
Yeah.
And I do also want to mention that I have started a group, and it's called Lena, Lena, and it's a group of moms that I have met in one way or another, some through the podcast, some through other ways. And Lena is an acronym for Loved, Encouraged, Not Alone. And so what I'm going to be doing is I have a text group going. So it's probably going to work for United States phone numbers at this time. But we're also going to do Zoom calls. And the goal is to do that once a month. So if that's something that you're interested in, just feel free to reach out to us through the website. And what is our email?
It's parentingautism@att.net.
Okay. It's just something I hadn't mentioned, but I've had the first Zoom meeting and I've added some people to the group. I'm probably got like 6 of us now. And I figure people will come and go, but me and my friend Stephanie, who is also an autism mama, we really have the heart for these ladies, and she's going to help me lead this group too. So thanks, Steph.
Yeah, you might think about somehow incorporating the WhatsApp, because I don't know if you can do video.
And then I've had where some people can do that and some people can't. So
okay,
I know
we'll figure it out.
But we'll figure it all out. If I have to do 2 groups, by golly, I will. Because I don't want to leave anyone out who truly feels that need to feel that love, encouragement, and that companionship. Because I saw a note that came through our local Facebook page that someone forwarded to me, and she was just saying she feels alone on her journey, and her son is 11 and been diagnosed. So anyway, wanted to just bring that up, and we're going to talk about today where Bryce had I think we had mentioned before that he had his auditory processing, but we got the results in the mail. And so I know there are some other parents who have taken their child to be tested because we shared about Bryce, and they've learned as well that their child also has auditory processing disorder. In this specifically, they said that Bryce seemed to present with his left ear a weakness of all of his dichotic test measures for both integration and separation. So it seems that he's got more of an issue in one ear than the other. Again, could be stroke related, so maybe it's just that side of the brain that developed differently. But I did see that they gave us several interventions this time to try to follow. They couldn't stress enough that music was very important. They said again that we should have music on in the cars when he's with us, music in the house. We have him taking music lessons. I'm trying to get him to play music on his iPad more so that he's listening to music more so than watching YouTubers.
Yes. Tickling those music brain cells.
Mm-hmm, because it really gets the different side of the brain working. So I know music is something that's really been, recommended strongly for us. And if you're interested and you want to know any more of the direct interventions, I won't bore all the listeners with this because it's kind of techy, but I'd be happy to share it. And again, we know that everybody has their own journey, and what works for Bryce may not work for your child and vice versa. But I know that I always love getting ideas to try, and so do you, and we pray about them, and hopefully by us receiving this kind of information and sharing it, it can help other children and families too. So that's the end goal.
I agree.
Okay. I need you to speak more because my throat's getting a little raw.
What do you want me to say?
I'm going to ask you questions and then you can answer them. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. And then I'll try to pick up some more steam. So this is one of the reasons why I don't do podcasts or talk on the phone very often, because my voice will give out after a period of time. But anyway, we can do this because we prayed over it. Homeschooling. So we got another email and actually had a really nice conversation with a couple the other day. Shout out to Becca and James and their son, Nick. But they had a lot of really good questions about homeschooling. This is the middle of October. When we tried to put Bryce in public school, it was, I think that's Bryce. Anyway, it was about late September that we had to take him out because you either know it's going to work or it's not. And hold on just a moment.
He's playing loud music.
I know
just
he
what
is.
we want.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, so you know we're doing a podcast, right?
Dun, 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 dun. Mommy's laying down the law. Alrighty then. We're back.
Bryce is in outer space and playing loud energy core music. Anyway, so I'm just sure that this time of year is where parents are seeing that maybe school isn't working out the way they hoped that it would. And so you have to make this homeschool decision.
Yeah.
So these were the questions that came up, and what we discussed with them. We thought, oh, I'm not going to email all this. Let's just do a FaceTime, which worked out great. But I also thought it might be good for listeners. So I'm going to ask you, and hopefully you'll remember all of this. And if not, we'll defer.
Wait a minute. You're testing me, and you didn't give me the answers.
I wanted to be sarcastic.
What kind of world are we living in?
They want to say this is like a presidential debate. I'm not going to give you the questions in advance.
Can they just be yes/no questions?
Oh, goodness. Which program do we use for curriculum?
It's called Acellus Power Homeschool, and we're in grade level 5. And what I told them when we had the FaceTime was that we started out with Time for Learning, which was a great program also. And both programs are very heavily video-based programs. And because Bryce hates writing, there was no way we could do homeschool using just books. There's just no possible way. Especially with his reading disability. It would just be so difficult. But anyway, Time for Learning worked great for the first few years. There came a time when there was a noise or part of the program that it was very bothersome to Bryce. And so it was so much so that we ended up switching programs. And so Time for Learning stopped, and then we went to Acellus Power Homeschool. It's been great. Do
you know how much it costs, roughly?
I think they just raised the price, but it's always been $25 a month. And that's your 4 core classes: math, science, social studies, and language arts. And so there's no live teacher. It's all recorded, and I'm there with him, walking him through the lessons, answering questions, ad-libbing about the topics, making sure he understands. So we do, 10 minutes or so of a lesson, and then we do 10 minutes or so of a lesson, and then there's usually questions to answer after the lesson. And then once we do those questions, we see if we've completed that subject. If not, we do the next video, the next round of questions, and then eventually it'll say complete. And how long does the 4 classes take?
It usually takes 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending if he has a review or if he has to type. If he has to type out paragraphs, that can take 30 to 40 minutes just for that.
We had to summarize a book that we read the other day, and it took him 40 minutes to write it all out, and with help, So we can go at our own pace, and the program automatically can adjust to when you want to end school. So You say, okay, well, I want to start in September and I want to end in May. And then it'll automatically adjust the amount of lessons that you have to do per day. And you can even choose how many days a week you're doing school. So it calculates all that for you. And then, and you can adjust it on the fly too. Let's say you had an unexpected 2-week period where you didn't do school, then you can adjust it or whatever.
Yeah, so I think it's very user-friendly in that way. We also use Ed Club. It's ED, like short for education, club, CLUB. That we use for an additional vocabulary program and typing. I saw they had a couple other things. I haven't explored into that yet, but he really loves the vocabulary. It will take like a specific prefix or suffix, and then it will give him so many words with that, and then sight words that he should know, which I can tell that his sight words have really increased, which is improved with his reading. And he does not like to write. It's been a challenge forever and a day. Like to write. Write. Sorry, my voice. So we told him you have to be able to communicate in one form or the other, writing or typing.
So he's been typing.
So he'll type.
Yep.
And that's been working out really well too. And that gives, like, he gets badges, so it motivates him. Bryce is very reward driven kind of kid. So, yeah.
And I will say that, I lost my thought while you're explaining all that.
Sorry.
But, that's okay.
If it's important, it'll come back, right? All right. Well, let's roll to the next question. How hard is it for you to balance being dad and teacher?
It's easy for me. I mean, Bryce and I have a great relationship, so he knows how much happier he is being home and being taught by me versus being at the public school. So I think he's thankful for that. And that makes homeschool a little easier because he knows that he doesn't want to go back to public school. And I just believe that it even cements the relationship better because you're just spending that much more time with your child together working through things, Just think of how this is going to benefit us through puberty and adulthood. Him and I, and you included, all of us working through these different lessons that we're doing with him, and we're doing it together. It's great.
Yeah. I think the fact that in our situation, which is probably less popular or, happens, is you were the main caregiver there, taking him to all his therapies and stuff when all this happened when he was 2. So you've kind of been that daytime parent where I was working outside the home for a longer period of time. I was trying to say, usually I think that's mom that leaves the job, and what we've heard, based on what people have shared. And so then they have that relationship. But I have told you all along, I think the fact that for the reasons that God called me out of the home and you to stay with him has given your relationship more than it would have had otherwise. Because I don't know what it is, but, maybe because the wife carries the child, or even if you adopt, somehow there's a different relationship with the mom versus the dad. And we've experienced that growing up too, right?
And I would say that normally the wife or the woman has the better relationship with the child because typically they spend more time together.
Yes. And then the dad comes home, and that dad's usually the disciplinarian. At least that's how I grew up. I'm going to tell your father.
From work, and
or they're just tired and they're not involved.
They just want to veg out.
Yeah. And so I think that's Bryce has had both of his parents very present every day in his life.
Yeah.
Even after the stroke, we were self-employed, and so every day he's really had a lot of us. Not every family or child benefits that way, but I do think it's you just work on the on that relationship, and then you can definitely define the difference. He knows daddy is daddy, and when you're teacher. And I have found even in my short time when we're working with him with schoolwork, I would just say, this is my school time with you. It's not fair if you're not giving it to me. And he's old enough now to understand that. He couldn't. And you always have to remember the age and where the child's at.
I think one point that I want to bring up is that we're choosing to do this. Like, we could both have careers outside of the home. Yep. We could be paying a teacher or a babysitter to come here and do his school with him, and we would be well off, right?
Yeah.
Financially speaking.
Yep.
But we've chosen to spend our time with each other and him. And it is a sacrifice, but we're making it work, and it's brought our family close together, and I don't regret 1 minute of it.
I'm happy to hear you say that. I don't either. I did say to Bryce, I think it was last week when we came back from New York, and we've done some nice trips, and some of this we've planned out before I left my job, so we had set money aside and stuff, but the well's drying up a little. And I said to him, have you really enjoyed having me home from Team IP and not having to work all the time? Oh yes, Mommy, I really love having you home. I said, that's great, because I know you really enjoy these trips, and they might slow down a little bit because I'm not getting the money that I used to. I said, but being together is more important than the money, right? And he paused. He says, I think I might need you to go back to Team IP, Mommy. I really do like these vacations.
I like traveling.
Yeah. So I see where Bryce's priorities are, but
right.
We know that the Lord will provide.
Yeah.
And we will do our best to continue to try to do these travels because they are good for him.
Yeah.
And we went up to New York to celebrate our nephew and his bride who got married. And it just happened to time out with Bryce's 11th birthday. And Bryce has been wanting to go to New York. So we were originally going to go in the spring. They got engaged. We're like, great, we'll do it all together. Perfect. And he just loved it. Obviously, he loved the elevators. If you follow our YouTube channel, you will see them all.
Parenting Autism Show.
Thank you. And but he also really loved just learning things. He loved being in the city. He liked being surrounded by tall buildings. He liked skyscrapers. But we took him to the 9/11 memorial. I mean, he asked a lot of questions. We walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, which was not planned, but he did it. And after he thought he couldn't do it, and he kept saying, I'll never do this. I'm going to die.
And we just kept encouraging him and telling him what a great thing it will be when we're finished crossing the bridge and he can look back on that on his birthday and remember that we walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. Yeah,
and we told him this is hard for us too. We weren't planning it. It was an
we're
impromptu
not spring chickens
decision.
Anymore.
No, we're not. and so we
and
stopped.
It was crowded.
Yeah, it was. And we stopped a few times along the way. It was very loud. And
not typically loud, mind you. But
no, it was the 100 plus motorcycles that were happened
New
to be
York.
driving past on the bridge while we were walking on it. Could it be any louder?
No.
But anyway, so we got across, and after we did, he said, oh, I made that achievement today. And he was super proud of himself.
Yeah.
And that's what we love, is getting him out into the real world, getting him out to where he can make achievements like that. And we've talked lately about how it's really flared back up with the sensitivity to sounds, and specifically to children who are crying. And the motorcycles didn't help. Lots of things.
He did really good on that.
He said the sirens, he wants to move to New York City, but he can't handle the sirens.
Are the worst
that
part.
Was the worst.
But he said he could deal with it.
Yeah, he thinks that because he loves the skyscrapers and all the elevators.
So funny side story, we get across the Brooklyn Bridge, all the while thinking we were going to get a cab to have lunch at this pizza place that we found because, Brooklyn's known for their great pizza.
Right.
So we hailed this cab and we said, hey, do you know where so-and-so pizza place? Well, you remember the name of it? It was really
Little
good.
Pizza Plaza?
Parlor.
Plaza? Sorry, we're botching it.
Little Pizza Parlor.
It was good, though.
I want to say that's what the name of it was.
That probably does sound right.
And I had the address. And the cat, I said, he gave me like this look like, what are you talking about? I said, do you know where this is? I have the address and the name. And we're just blocks away. I mean, it was
we walked there in 10 minutes.
Less than a mile, I guess. And no, I don't know where that is. I said, okay, then let's get out of this cab. And so we all piled out of the cab. There, one pulled up behind him. I said, hey, do you know where this pizza place is? Here's the address. No, don't know where that is. I said, okay, well, I guess we're walking. So
actually, it was about 20 minutes, and we stopped at this little park area to rest.
But it really was like within a mile or two of where we were standing.
I guess we were meant
So we got there. The pizza was excellent, by the way. They have the really good pepperonis. Oh, I'm thinking about it now, and I want a pizza. But anyway, super nice owner. And then we were just minutes from our nephew's apartment. So we decided to walk the rest of the way.
Yep.
So when we got there, we said, hey, we walked all the way from New York City to get here.
That's true. We left Manhattan by foot. But we did that too because the elevator tour, we were going to try to do the observatory. We couldn't get in time. And then we saw we were at Grand Central Station and we did the subway. So Bryce got to do that experiment.
Yeah, we were going to do an elevator tour and then we couldn't get in. So I'm like, well, let's just take the subway over to
So he got to do the subway. Yeah. And then he also got to walk the Brooklyn Bridge. So it was really good.
It really, and it just went smooth. Like the transition, okay, we're not doing that. Let's do this.
Yeah. So he did good. And he had to make a few transitions on that because he had his mindset that he wanted to do the One World Trade Center on his birthday because that was the tallest. And it would have worked a lot better with our schedule if he did it on the 4th instead of the 5th. And so when you ran that by him, he thought about it briefly and then he goes, okay, I can do this on Friday the 4th. And it was great. Like he had to make the shift in his mind. It made sense to him. And then we told him we would do something else special. And then it ended up that we also went to the Edge Observatory, which if you haven't done that, very cool. And it ended up being one floor higher. So he was excited that one ended up being the highest. Yeah. So it all worked out great. Really, it was really a fabulous trip. And part of homeschool education really is how I look at it because we take him out and we teach him.
It is.
Like hands-on.
Like when we went to Virginia.
Educational stuff.
We went to Jamestown.
So we tried to work all that out.
When we went to Baltimore, we went to Fort McHenry.
And there's more than what's in the books. You teach what's out in real life.
Oh yeah.
So that's how we roll. So another question asked was, did homeschooling impact your relationship as husband and wife positively or negatively? The worry was that dinner conversations would turn into parent-teacher conferences and less married conversations. Sorry.
Well, I think in any marriage, you're going to talk about what happens during the day. We're still working, so we talk about what happened at work, and we talk about school, and we talk about everything. So it doesn't dominate the conversation. And like we told them in years past, sometimes we would have meltdowns during the day, whether it had to do with school or something else. And I would text you and say, hey, this happened. This is what to expect when you get home. Don't mention this or don't talk about that,
And if you could record something for me, while it was happening, you would do that too.
So I would record a video of what was happening at the time of the happening and send it to you so you have a better idea of what exactly happened. And it was good for me too because I don't always remember what exactly happens. So having a video of it was better for me to recap. And if we saw the autism doctor, we could really describe what happened.
Yeah. So I just think it's a matter of balancing that. But for us, it's really never been an issue. And when I was working and I wasn't here, you would only call me really it was an emergency. If I got texts, that just meant I could see them when I had a chance to see them.
Yep.
I'm old school, so I never had a phone, for personal calls or texting when I worked. And I don't need the distractions of it.
Right.
So that's why we had the rule. If you need me, then you call me. If I'm not picking up, you get to the next person to go get me.
And we want to respect your employer too.
Absolutely. So it didn't interrupt the day. And it's like you said, that's your job, a part of it. So it'd be like, how'd your day go today? How was work today? Anything you want to share with me or that I should know?
Yep.
And I think on a rare occasion, if there was something that I felt like, well, maybe we can do this differently, then I would even say, okay, I'm going to call a parent teacher meeting here. And then we would talk it through and say, well, maybe we can try this or try that. And, the most important thing has always been to be very respectful of your role as his teacher and not to undermine your authority ever in front of him, but not even when he's not around, because I have to trust that you're with him in the classroom setting more than I was. And even now I don't sit there and observe. So I have to trust that you will come to me if there's a problem, just like any other teacher would.
Yeah, that's true.
To say,
and
has something changed that maybe I'm missing it?
Right? I think we obviously homeschooling would have better communication about school than a child at a public school, because you're just not going to get that one-on-one feedback.
So I would say, your relationship with each other and how you choose to have those conversations will determine the outcome of that, like those, how it's going to go. So let's see, if Bryce doesn't want to do an activity, how do you handle that?
Sure. So, I think, was that a school activity?
Yeah. So do you just skip over it, or do you force him to complete the work?
I'd look at it as if it was any activity. So let's just say it's any activity and he doesn't want to do it. So now that he can talk and we can have a conversation with him, we'll drill down to exactly what's bothering him about that, right? So then I'll see if it makes sense for me to intervene, help, encourage, what exactly is the problem where he wants to avoid whatever the activity is. And I will say that it rarely happens, I will say. And I think it's because of the relationship that we have with him. We have a great relationship with him. So, but if it does happen, we work through it together. And I don't think there's ever been a time where we've completely avoided or not done an activity because there was a problem. I think there's probably been a poem or two in language arts that we've skipped because he really didn't understand what the poem was about. And poems can be hard to understand because they're kind of like riddles. And then I would help him through the series of questions that followed. And they usually give you a summary when they're doing questions. So I would read the summary to him, and most likely he would have the answer anyway with the summary. But overall, we really haven't had to not do a class or an activity or a portion of class.
This is kind of hot off the press.
Yeah.
But yesterday, can't remember why, but you needed to leave early. And so you asked me to finish social studies and science.
Right. And he didn't want to do
in social studies
with you.
He was studying about Lewis and Clark and a famous Native American lady who helped with the interpretation.
Sacagawea.
Yeah. Wasn't even going to attempt her name. So I know Pocahontas. But anyway, so he had to write at least 50 words about how she helped Lewis and Clark in North America. And so when we looked at it, I wasn't sure how you handled that. I didn't know if you did the typing or if he did the typing. I didn't know how much you led him in that, or if you just had him come up with his own sentences. And so when you got home, I said, well, we'll just have to wait till Daddy gets home. And then when you got home, it's late. And then he was just, you're like, you know what? We can do it tomorrow, buddy. It's okay.
Yeah.
And we did. And so then today, darn
you
it,
got stuck with
you
it
had to
again.
leave again. So I'm like, we got the same problem. So he says, well, Daddy will do it. I said, nope, we're going to do it this time. So I helped him with the sentence, and he did great. He knew how to check the grammar on there because he knows the system really well.
Right.
And I just wanted to make sure I wasn't giving him all the answers. So I'm like, well, what was the story about? Okay, so we know she was going to help Lewis and Clark.
And did it give you part of the story over on the one side?
No.
Okay.
So we were completely blind. So I didn't know what he had learned. So I asked Google, because we have to keep Google by our school system. And I said, what is the definition of interpreting? So he would understand what it meant when she was interpreting and guiding them. But then the way she put that, she being Google, sorry, it was like using other words he didn't understand.
Oh, no.
You know? So I'm like, well, I don't want you and I told him, I don't want you using words that you don't understand. So if you don't know what that word means, then we have to come up with a different way to say it. So I said, well, it really just means she was helping him talk with the Native Americans. I said, so you could put that if you want. But he said his sentence was they had to check on the animals to make sure they were okay and that they wouldn't eat them. Was that part of your story? Wasn't what I thought it would be, and then I said, well, what animals wasn't? He goes, the bears and the bulls. I said, all right, well, you need more words, so let's take out animals and put the bears and the bulls, which gave him a few more words.
One of the purposes of the expedition was to send Lewis and Clark into the western United States to document what the conditions were like and what animals they saw.
There you go.
Okay. So that's probably where.
So that was his interpretation.
Yeah.
So that's what he got out of it, because I was not prompting any of this because I didn't know what was specifically
taught
in the lesson other than the interpreting and guiding. So anyway, we got up to past the 50 word mark, and then he had 105%. They gave him a 6th grade level. I'm like, oh crap, I must have led you too well. Sorry, buddy. I mean, sorry, not sorry. But my biggest concern is that I don't want to overlead him to where it's not his work. And then it looks like we have boy genius and they keep advancing him, but he doesn't really understand it. So
yeah, and it's a balance. You have to help him
a little
because listen, Lewis and Clark, how many people are going to remember that the first time through? And I'm sure they'll revisit that in 6th grade. But how I help him through those things is obviously, since I taught the lesson with him, I knew the background.
Yeah.
But depending on what kind of day that we've had, sometimes I will type for him if he tells me the sentence. I make him tell me the complete sentence from beginning to end, and then I'll type it for him. If he's had a lot of typing that day, or it's just been a long day in general, let's say, for instance, he already typed a story for language arts, and then we run into this again at social studies, then sure, I'll do the typing for him, but he has to do it in his own words and tell me what he wants to say. And I will make suggestions. So if he tells me sentences that were out of order in the story, I'll say, well, I think this came before that, so let's put this sentence before that other sentence, right? So I'll help him make it flow better.
Well, I did that today as well, because when he was talking about they would check on the animals and make sure they were okay. He said it where the beginning of the sentence was in past tense and the end of the sentence was in present tense. So I just took that as a grammar teaching opportunity.
Perfect.
And I said that to him. I said, that was good what you said, and I understand what you're trying to say, but this is just helping you with your grammar. If you're going to start in past tense here, see that word? Then you have to use past tense here. So we have to change this one and we have to change this one. But he did all the typing and he did all the changes, and I just helped him to that degree.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we just guide him, we're teachers. Yeah.
I mean, had he written that, in a regular school setting and submitted it to his teacher, I would hope that his teacher would just help correct him on those things, right? It's like him
Instead
getting
of just
it
giving
back.
him enough.
Or if he saw red ink on there, he would hate that. But
yeah.
So we had already said that how many hours a day do we do school? Well, it's kind of tricky.
Well, yeah. So the core subjects take 90 to 120 minutes.
Yes. But
we
don't
do-
want him.
We do extra.
Yeah, we do extra
We do
because A,
typing.
he needs it, and
Right.
B, we just don't want him sitting and playing on his tablet,
Right.
Or
When we
Switch
have
or
time to
something.
be able to spend with
when
him.
we have this time carved out to do, and so there's days that he has therapy, so obviously that's going to work into his schedule, and that is work for him.
Yeah.
I took him for a reading evaluation today, which we'll talk about. And he told me, I've worked so hard today, Mommy, because he had to do that social studies thing. And then he had his therapies and he has to write when he's there, which is good. But for him, that is a lot of hard work.
By the time we're said and done, it's a full day for him. At least until 3 o'clock.
Our
I would
goal
say.
is 9. The goal is 9 to 4 to keep him busy.
And sometimes he finishes at 3. Sometimes it's 4. Sometimes it's 5.
Right. So that's kind of our goal. And then he can wind down for the rest of the evening. And then I actually took his piano and drum lessons out of the daytime because I wanted him to have something else in the evening, which I thought would be
practice?
good. I did
Not
mean
his
his practice. I'm
lesson,
sorry.
yeah.
I mean his practice for lessons. Sorry. So he'll do that at 7 in the evening now.
Yeah.
And to me, that kind of starts the evening wind down. So
And again, we give him a lot of breaks. We do
was
it
another
in small
question.
segments.
and
And I already covered that earlier, but yeah.
So talking about his breaks, because he does get breaks, and yes, he likes his electronics like most children do and adults. But I talked on the last podcast episode, I just really got to find ways to reduce this, which we are. And some of that's by keeping him busy, giving him alternatives. But we've talked before how he's so responsive to this point system. What I want to do is set up a new list of points, like what he can redeem them for. And then I want to give him a list of things he can do on his break that don't involve us, because we got to encourage that independent
play.
And he can earn points for depending what he does. But he will get no points, obviously, if he does his iPad. And he'll get no points if he does the Switch. But if he does something that is not the most preferred, but something we prefer more, then we'll reward him with points. I think that'll work.
I think even watching a movie could be points for him because he learns that way. You learn situations. You learn moral of the story. You learn those things.
I think in the beginning, I would give him points for that. I think I would wean away from that, and here's my reason why. He already does videos for school, and then he's on another screen, and then he's on another screen, and your eyes don't blink. It's not as good for your physical body. So I want to try to get him doing things that don't involve a screen at all. You know what I'm saying? That's like my end goal there. But anyway, so that kind of wraps up the homeschooling part that I wanted to cover today, which will be the majority of this. I was going to tell you a couple things since we got to talk about this anyway, and I'll try not to be too long. Where are we at on time?
We're ready to wrap.
48 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if we hit an hour, I'm okay. You okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, I'll wrap this in. So the other night, it was a Monday night before we were going to go back to therapy on Tuesday. You took him to bed, and I guess there was a 30-minute conversation about why he didn't want to go to therapy because of a sobbing child.
Yes.
And so
A crying child.
and he's using the word sobbing now.
Oh.
He must have learned that one. So anyway,
Must have learned that word.
somewhere along the line. So you bring him back into our bed, and I'm like, okay, no, we're going.
Right. So I mean, I tried to figure out who the child was, where the crying was taking place at therapy, how he could keep himself away from that. But there was he just kept going on. I can't, Daddy, I can't.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I got to go to sleep. So
You brought him to bed. And I'm like, and I need to sleep without him in the bed, so we're going to take him back. So I took him in his room, and, I just said to him right away, Bryce, what is this? And he's like, well, it's because of that sobbing kid that I heard, that child. And I'm like, well, why are you telling me this now at bedtime the night before we go, when I ask you every time when I pick you up, and the last time I picked you up, I asked you how your day was, and you told me it was great. I said, so if it was great, then why is it a problem now? And he said, oh, well, I forgot, Mommy, I forgot. I said, well, if it was that bad, you would not have forgotten. You would have told me, right? And well, it happened in the first hour. Okay. I said, well, again, if it was that bad, you would have told me, and your therapist would have told me. But when you wait until it's bedtime from the night before, I can't think that it is that bad, although I know you have this fear about it, so let's talk about it. I said, I want you to, how bad is it? How bad is the sound? And I said, are you in the same room? No, they're not next to me. Okay, good, because they're not supposed to be next to you. He goes, it was in another room. I said, okay. He said, but I could still hear him the whole time. Did you say anything? No, I forgot. I said, okay. Now, first, I want you to know, if that happens, you can speak up to your therapist.
Well, I told him that, and he said that, oh, well, they'll just tell me to keep working.
He did not tell me that. Yeah. So interesting. I said, you can speak to your therapist, and I said, you can't just leave the room, okay? But you can tell your therapist that you need to leave the room and take you to Miss Tara, and Tara's the manager. And I said, and if you can tell them if it's 10 pain for you, I said, and you can tell them to call me and I will come.
And that's what I told him.
I said, but I don't want you to feel you're trapped, because you're not. But I said, I need it to be 10 pain if I ever get that call. I said, Dr. Schiffman? Dr. Schiffman, for reference, is the one that worked on Bryce's leg in 2020, 4 years ago, and he has not forgotten how bad that was to get that infection removed. So I said, that's 10 pain, right? Yes. I said, what if you told me when you stubbed your toe on the couch that was 10 pain, but really that was probably what? He goes, probably like a 3 pain. I said, thank you. There is a difference. There's a scale. There's 1 and there's 10. You usually give everything a 10 or a 0. I said, you got to find that middle ground. And I want you to think, how bad was it? You had headphones on, right? Yes. You were in a different room, right? Yes. I said, so I know it was not 10. What number was it? I'd probably give it about a 4 or a 5. I said, perfect. That's what I'm thinking. If it's a 4 or a 5, I still want you to say something. Let them know that it's bothering you. They don't need to call me, but you can ask them to move you further away.
Right. Because listen, he's going to be in there for an hour. And if I heard that for an hour, I'd be annoyed too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
So then I said to him, okay, I'm sure he's out there listening. But anyway, I said, I just want you to understand this. We cannot always control when there's going to be sounds that are going to upset you. And we do our best. And we try to prevent it if we know it's going to happen. But my concern is if you don't learn how to tolerate and not get angry and hurt yourself when you hear a 4 or a 5 pain, that's going to be a problem, because we won't be able to leave our house. We won't be able to go to restaurants. We won't be able to go to New York. We won't be able to go on vacations, because I cannot control when there's going to be a child that's going to be upset and is going to cry. What if we're on an airplane? We can't get out of that airplane. And there are babies who travel on airplanes and they're not happy. Their ears hurt. They're hungry. They're tired. They're going to cry. And then what are you going to do? You have to learn, if it's not a 10 pain, you got to figure out ways. I said, and I'm here to help you, and we'll figure them out. But you've got to be able to figure this out, okay? Or your life is going to be very different, and it's not going to be as happy as it could be if you're not able to do that.
That was excellent.
So he really took that in. Thank you.
Wow.
He took it in well. And then I said, let's pray for you now, and we'll pray you have a good day tomorrow. And so when I picked him up yesterday, I said, okay. Well, I walked him in so that he could tell everybody. And he felt good about that. But then I also said, and I also explained to him, he has to learn how to work through this sometimes so that we don't get stuck in our house forever.
So let me just clarify. You walked in with him and explained to either the therapist or Miss Tara
both at the same time
that this
is an
problem
issue.
occurred.
I actually let Bryce speak, and he told them.
And good that you were aware of it. If there was any serious issue to call.
Absolutely.
So I like that you did that because now everybody's on the same page and the therapists know that you know. Right?
Yep.
And so and
it was interesting because I said to Tara, Bryce said it happened on Tuesday last week because we weren't there Wednesday and Thursday because of the hurricane and the tornadoes that came through here. So
that's another story.
That's a different story we won't go into. So on Tuesday, I knew it was Tuesday. Well, the problem children that I'm aware of is on Wednesday and Thursday. So I'm like, well, who was here on Tuesday? She goes, there's nobody here on Tuesday. And I'm like, when he's here. And I said, no, he said it was Tuesday for the whole hour.
And he's usually pretty spot on.
And he said it was the first hour. So she went and looked on the schedule and she went, oh, I know who it is. I said, okay, well, who is it? And so she told me the child's name. And so now I will know for reference with Bryce which child that was. Okay. And she said he's 2. Okay. And so then she said to Bryce, he's only 2.
And he can't.
And he's just learning to be away from his mommy. Oh. So that was great for me to know.
That's what I tried to explain to him during that 30 minutes was, a lot of these kids, they can't talk, and so something might be hurting them and they just can't say what it is. And he said, yeah, that's what it is. They don't have their words. And I said, now, isn't that sad? I mean, wouldn't you be sad if you couldn't tell somebody what was going on with you? I mean, so I tried to work the sympathy, empathy.
Yes.
And that seemed to have some impact.
And he does have that.
Yeah.
I mean, he tries with that. Like he was even trying to calm the one girl that was upsetting him before. But this is a new one. And so that helped me know, okay, I have a 2-year-old. So when I picked him up yesterday, he said everything was great. I said, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I got lucky. I said, well, I don't think you were lucky, but I think that, God knew.
One of the other things he told me was, I said, well, they'll eventually learn how to talk, Bryce, and they'll be better, And he's like, I know, but new kids will still be coming and they'll be younger and it won't stop.
It was. And on that note, when we were in New York, you said something. We were somewhere in the airport and there was a crying child. And you said, oh, they're everywhere, Bryce. He goes, I know. That's why I'm going to have to move to the moon.
Yes, he did say that.
Deadpan serious.
And I will say that it also helped one time when I told Bryce that it was bothering me too.
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
In the last podcast. Yeah. So he knew that he wasn't alone. It's not like he's the problem.
And I told him that again today when I dropped him off before. And I said, you are not the only one who doesn't like this. And you're not, believe me, you know that, right? And he's like, yeah. And then afterwards, he told me he got lucky again. But I said, no, I think you're doing good. And I'm glad that you had a couple of days off from it. But we're working through it. We're finding ways. And I didn't tell you our conversation because I said, I'll just tell you on the podcast because I knew we were going to do it. And I thought that it went well.
It went well. And I asked him yesterday and today, how'd it go? And it went great, And I'm like, well, see, I said prayer. You prayed about it. And look,
sometimes it may happen. Sometimes it doesn't. But, I know he worries about that. Anything he doesn't know that's coming up worries him. But he's got to learn to tolerate that. So as he said, they're all going to keep happening. I think I had one more. I'll talk about the reading thing next time.
Sounds good.
So we can wrap up. I know. And what was the other thing I wanted? Oh, I know. This was
funnies.
Just another funny. Yeah, the one about the moon was funny. And then you said to him the other day, he wanted you to do something. You go, okay, Bryce, I'll do it. Just give me a minute. He goes, okay, 59, 58, 57, 56, 55.
Yes. And I couldn't even concentrate on what I could do. Yeah, like give me. So now I need to say, give me 5.
Yep, because if you say a minute, then he's going to literally count you down 1 minute, so out loud.
Yes,
so that was very funny. Funny enough to know.
I was sending somebody a text that I had worked hard on, And you can't write a text while somebody's in your ear going
down.
44, 43.
Oh my gosh, he is so funny. And then I love just the way he says things. You know, his lingo is very different than ours sometimes. But after he turned 11, he says, "Well, next year, when I'm 12, I get to sit in the front seat of the car."
Yeah.
He goes, "I get to sit in the front seat. It's my new ability I get to unlock."
Yeah.
So I made a note of that.
That was great.
So cute.
He thinks about those things.
He does.
And we don't even know it.
No, but I love it when he shares the stuff. He's such a delight. It is nice when his therapists come out and they tell me what a sweet child he is.
We love working with him.
He's so sweet. He's so loving, and he is. And that is the core of his soul.
Mm-hmm.
And last week, I mentioned a few minutes ago, we had a hurricane that came through here, Hurricane Milton, and we had a lot of tornadoes. But when they were leaving on Tuesday, his therapist brought him out. She goes, "He is just the sweetest." And he just said to Miss Tara, "Okay, stay safe in this storm. I hope you survive it."
Just deadpan.
And then afterwards, when we were done, he did say, "We survived it." I'm like, "Yep, we sure did, buddy."
Did. And he
he cares
we'll
about
talk
other
more
people.
about the hurricane later, but he did very well through it.
He did.
We'll
Thank you,
about
Lord. So it was good. All right. Well, we'll wrap up for now.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks. That's it.
And in the meantime, we uploaded a bunch of YouTube videos on our adventures in New York City. So I think it's Parenting Autism Show is our channel.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Or Parenting Autism.
And if you type in Bryce with Parenting Autism Show, something should pop up and
when
lead you there.
When you see the icon with the colorful puzzle pieces, that's us. So.
Okay. Thanks for listening, guys.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.